All right, guys, here I am back again with Woody. Woody, what's going on, man?
I'm doing great. How are you, Ben Ash?
I'm doing fantastic, dude. Getting a lot of requests for you to get back on the channel, so here you are. We actually missed last season's popularity snapshot, unfortunately, both because we were busy and because, you know, it was kind of a lot of the same there for a while, but things have definitely, livened up in the meta right now, so perfect time to have you back on the channel and talk about it. So first of all, what do you think of the meta right now before we get into all the movers and shakers, and even we're going to talk about the Battleram and new cards and Executioner and everything else, but what do you think, man? I think this is the best meta ever. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Where's your head at?
There certainly has been a lot of change recently. The release of Executioner and a balance update has made a big impact on the metagame. To answer your question, I am decently pleased with how it is right now. I wouldn't say it's my favorite because Siege is still not doing quite well. Beatdown is really dominant. But I think that overall it's good, except for one key problem right now that I see, and that's with the Executioner, this new card that just came out.
Ooh, interesting. Well, we're going to use that as a tease, because first, let's talk briefly about, what deck are you playing right now?
I'm playing a Mortar Deck, and I got this from one of my friends named Shreyas. It's got Ice Golem, Rocket, Archers, some Mega Minion, just some support troops for the Mortar, but just plays relatively defensively, and then tries to get that final strike in at the end with a big burst. I've actually gotten my highest trophies of all time using it. I'm over 5K now, and it's the first time that I got...
Congrats, man.
Yeah,
that's a huge achievement.
5127, I think, is my highest right now with the Mortar Deck.
Wow, well done, man. Well done. Are you still level 12?
I am still level 12, yeah.
Very impressive for a level 12. Very impressive, man. Congrats. You're going to have to send me that deck. You know what? After this is done, send me the deck and I'll put it on the overlay so people can see it. Check it out. Maybe they can copy it themselves.
Of course.
So let's hop into the snapshot a little bit here. A lot of movers and shakers this time. We have the big gainers being Lightning, Arrows, Furnace, Skarmy. Log is the new top card. Zap kind of going down. We'll talk about the losers in a sec, but can you tell me what stands out amongst the big gainers? I know you made a special note saying that minions have replaced Mega Minion as the most popular non-spell card in the game. I suspect that might be changing. We'll talk about that, but you know, what kind of stands out to you? There's a lot to get to, so what's the first thing you noticed?
I think that the biggest thing to notice here is that the changes to Zap and the Log have definitely made a big impact on the metagame. We saw a big drop in Zap and a big increase in the Log. The Log basically does the same things that it did before. The little damage decrease that it had and the minor knockback nerf that it got didn't really hurt it as much as the change to Zap, which no longer kills goblins. Goblin Barrel being one of the scariest things to have to face down when you're playing a good defensive game. You get these goblins, thrown directly onto your tower. You often need a really quick response. And the Log now provides that, and Zap no longer does. So Zap took a big hit in the rankings. We also saw a decrease in the usage of Ice Golem and Ice Spirit, two other really cheap popular cards that defensive decks relied upon in order to get those positive elixir trades to make the big pushes happen and get the tower damage on their opponent. So the big story here is that nerfs to cheap spells have really bolstered some of the swarm-type cards like Skeleton Army and Minions, and have also made big beatdown decks a lot more viable, because the control decks that countered them aren't really doing so hot in the metagame anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, we talk about this every time you're on too, but you just see one or two win conditions change, and then you see the whole supporting cast of cards change along with them, So you see the Arrows for the first time in a long time getting some life, and you see, like you talked about, the Log replacing Zap at the top of that list there. You listed a bunch of sample decks. It's kind of a two-part question. Number one is what do you think is your favorite archetype for someone to try? Maybe, for an archetype someone hasn't picked up in a while, I'm thinking maybe Control, something that could work now that may not have worked in the past, part one. And part two, which really has nothing to do with part one, is What should people take away from this snapshot in terms of their own decks that maybe they're playing their favorite deck that they've been comfortable with for quite a while now? Would you recommend maybe taking a look and saying, hey, you know what? People seem to be playing minions more than Mega Minion. Maybe I'll give that a shot. Should they make those small adjustments, and does it apply more to spell cards or more to troop cards?
I'll take those questions in order. The first one, you asked whether players should be considering any new deck archetypes, and you mentioned control, but I really think beatdown is absolutely dominant right now. We do see some Hog Rider control decks having success at the top of the ladder, but 3 out of the 4 top decks at the top are beatdown decks. Giant is the most popular win condition. It actually broke into the top 8 used cards at the very top of the ladder for one of the first times ever. So if anyone is interested in trying out a deck that they may have not touched for a while, or is interested in a new archetype, I think Giant Prince Beatdown is the way to go. If you were frustrated playing against Giant Poison back in the day, you are really going to be hurting if you don't know how to play or counter the Giant Prince Beatdown. It actually uses Lightning instead of Poison as the main offensive spell in the deck, and it is an absolutely killer deck right now. A lot of people are playing Executioner in this deck. Musketeer can help counter an opponent's Executioner, so the jury is still out on which ranged troop fits best in this deck, but the heavy beatdown decks are doing very well right now, and so I would recommend that one. And then your second question was regarding potential changes to decks that you're already familiar with. I think that it is important to be cognizant of the changes in balancing that are done. So if cards that you have used in the past to great success have been nerfed really hard, it does makes sense for you to consider a replacement there. The Mega Minion has been hit multiple times, so it might be a good opportunity to go back to minions at this point. A great example that you provided. Another reason that you might want to do that is because minions are easier to level up as a common card. But overall, I'd say that it's more important to be aware of the changes to the metagame, not necessarily the changes to individual cards, because if you are playing really strong against a control deck, archetype, a swarm deck, that you may be seeing frequently on the ladder, and then all of a sudden beatdown becomes very popular, you're going to have a bad time if you kind of have the same mindset going into a game of the sort of cards that you would expect.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if Mega Minion kind of takes that place back at the top, or at least maybe they're really close next Snapshot, especially as people start getting that Executioner leveled up. That being one reason, and the other reason being because, like you just mentioned, beatdown being so huge, sometimes the Mega Minion can do a little bit better job against the tanks or the supporting troops, depending on, what they're rocking. If it's Executioner especially, gonna probably want to run with the Mega Minion, but at this point, kind of jury's still out, I think. It's still in that transition phase where people are kind of, trying to get a gauge on what works and what doesn't. Do you think there's any archetype that's kind of on life support right now that doesn't do well in the meta?
I think that Siege is on life support right now. I've been enjoying playing.
But you always think that.
I guess maybe I always think that, but I think it's particularly true. If you look at the most popular win conditions right now, they're all Golem, they're all Giant. We even see a ton of Balloons and Hog Riders. I think Expo is down there at like an anemic 3 uses out of the top 100, and there's 0 usage for Mortar. So I have said it for months now, and I think that it remains true that Siege is very difficult to pull off effectively if you are trying to get a building set up on your side of the arena, or throwing stuff directly at your opponent's tower rather than just going straight at it with troops. You're gonna have a hard time.
I can hear the comments now, Woody. The guy just got his new personal best with Mortar, and he wants a Siege buff. But no, I agree with you. It's funny that we just saw, obviously, Pompeo just got first place the previous season using the Expo deck, and now it's just like, whoa, Expo, tough now. It's very tough. What do you think about Executioner, man? Do you think a lot of people are saying he's too powerful. I have my own thoughts, but why don't you go first?
I completely agree with the people who say he's too powerful. His stats are very generous for the cost coming in at 5. He's basically like a super wizard. That's how Yarn put it. He is able to beat any matchup that a wizard can win, but then also has the additional survivability of basically a knight or an ice golem in terms of hit points. He doesn't die to lightning. He can hit things that he really shouldn't be able to hit. There's a few, I think that they're bugs with the Executioner where he can hit things that are behind him He can hit things that are played right on top of him, even if his axe is really far away from him.
Yeah, he has that like big hitbox, it feels like.
Yeah, and as Yarn also noted, we have an interruption,
Yes.
what's the word? An interrupting effect whenever he hits small or medium-sized troop. This is especially deadly if you're trying to use something like the Mega Minion or the Mini P.E.K.K.A. in order to counter the Executioner. It's very hard to actually get the timing exactly right to make sure that you get those swings that you need to kill the guy, because every time he attacks, he's stunning and doing a tiny little pushback against your troops. So he's broken overpowered right now. We saw a lot of usage of Executioner up at the top, despite the fact that he was only like level 4 or 5 in a lot of cases. Players were choosing him over max level cards because he is so effective at tearing down swarms, at surviving spells, and eventually reaching the tower and dealing quite a bit of damage on his own.
Yeah, I'm with you. I want to temper that by saying that, sure, a lot of people haven't really learned to counter him best, but, you hit the nail on the head, and I saw it in the same OJ video yesterday where he mentioned it, and, I think everybody was thinking it, and then it wasn't until OJ, officially mentioned it that I was like, you know what? That wasn't intended. I mean, no one ever told us about this delay interrupt effect that he has, right? So, yeah, you're right. The cards that should be an ideal counter for him are, just an also-so counter because of that delay effect. I mean, it's crazy to me that, he's taking the Mini P.E.K.K.A. with him, even if he's placed right next to him. He's taking him down to, below half health at tournament level standards just because of that interruption. It's crazy, but, at the same time, I love that first of all, I was so wrong, man. I tweeted out, thank God I didn't say this in my on YouTube, even though I'm admitting to it now, but I tweeted out that, I was kind of skeptical of those last balance changes, and I'm totally ready to eat crow at this point because, before the Executioner, it was kind of, zap bait everywhere, which was kind of refreshing in a way, even though I suck at it, but, it felt like, okay, this is kind of a weird meta, and these are some weird balance changes. It was like the nerf train hit pretty hard, but now that you mix in the OP Executioner with those balance changes, now I kind of like it. I mean, we talked last episode about the Prince and the Dark Prince and the P.E.K.K.A. and how they're useless and how can you make them useless again. Well, one way apparently is to add a really OP splash damage range card to put right behind them, and that's exactly what happened. So that's really the crux of why I do feel the meta is in the best place ever, because you see the beatdown decks, you see the control decks, you still see the hog decks, you see a decent variety of decks, and even though you hate, where Siege is at, you still get your PB with it, and ultimately, I just think that it's refreshing to see some of these old cards that haven't been used forever, really, ever in competitive play when you talk about the Prince, or maybe way back in the Triple P power decks, but I like it. I like the fact that you kind of mentioned the Prince deck already, the Prince Beatdown, but I'm playing right now a Golem Beatdown deck. It's got a 4/4 average elixir cost, ridiculously high, but it's still viable. It's Executioner, Dark Prince, and Golem being the main combo. I kind of like where we're at in terms of that. I hope if they do touch the Executioner, I just hope they don't hit him too hard, because I like what he does to the game. At least I do. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't at all.
You want him hit hard.
I want him hit hard. I think that there need to be mechanical changes to him, and he could also
I just want the interruption removed. Do you want more than that?
Sorry, what?
I just want the interruption effect removed. Do you want more?
I want the interruption effect removed. I want the area denial removed, so that basically whenever he swings his axe, he's not really swinging like an individual weapon. He's summoning a line of Valkyries that can hit air troops in front of him. And it looks like it's just an axe going forward and backward, but he's actually, it's like he's rolling a bowling ball that just spits lava out of it and just hits everything in its path. It hits things that are above his head and behind him, so minions aren't even really a good counter. You can't really just even distract him and drop something on top of him. So he's very annoying to deal with. I'm just happy that I'm running Rocket, because a lot of players just drop him behind his King Tower, and I'm happy to make the 6 or 5 trade whenever they give me that opportunity.
Yeah, definitely worth it. No, I guess time will tell, what the right answer is. There's no doubt about it that, to kind of play devil's advocate to my own argument, there's no doubt about it that as people get him leveled up, his popularity is only going to increase. So I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't doubt if he's, skyrockets to the level that Graveyard previously was, and people are probably going to get sick of him sooner rather than later. Not to be a populist at this point, but it does suck. It would suck though if the free-to-play players finally get him leveled up and boom, there's the nerf hammer. But hey, I guess that's part of the game at any regard. But what do you think of RG, man? What do you think of Royal Giant? It's been a long time since we've kind of harped on his popularity. What do you think?
Right quick before we move on to Royal Giant, I did just want to comment that Clash Royale has officially commented and said that they consider the knockback effect that happens with the Executioner bug. So we hope to see that fixed, and they said it'll probably be happening in March.
Breaking news, thank you.
Yeah. Good info, good to know going forward, I'm sure, for your followers. But regarding Royal Giant, he is not quite as scary as he may seem for players who are facing him. Just because he's over-leveled on ladder. He is really annoying, especially as a Siege player, to deal with. I think that he's kind of bad for the game, and I'd be happy to see a nerf, but it's not really my top concern right now. I think it's okay that we have a big dude like Royal Giant that can serve as a win condition for free-to-play players who need a common card that they want to be able to play. I just think that we need more balance in the rarity of some cards, like for rare and epic cards, so that the other players can have a better opportunity to combat the Royal Giant. One of the big issues right now is that commons get over-leveled really super easily on ladder, and so I think that's one of the reasons why he's super scary.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Everything you said, basically, we're in agreement on this one. I don't like Royal Giant, but I do like powerful common cards, as long as there's more than one of them, But is Elite Barbs, are they useful anymore? I mean, they're at 3% of decks or something right now in the top 100. Do you think they hit them too hard, or are you kind of okay with it?
Woof, man, they did get hit hard, but it's not particularly the debuff that they got, the nerf that they got. It's more the change in the metagame, and I think this is another reason why Royal Giant is not doing quite so hot right now. The big, heavier beatdown decks like Giant Prince, and, the Golem deck that you just mentioned, have just been tearing apart on the ladder. These sort of kind of medium-sized pushes that you can put together with a Royal Giant that can pester a lane and do a lot of damage are just not competitive with some of these archetypes that can actually just completely tear down a tower in one push.
And how about Tornado, Mohammed? And Tornado is like coming on the scene strong now. I mean, between King Tower activation and just the synergy the card has with the Executioner, it seems like, man, Tornado, you got to be aware every time you send in that Miner, that Goblin Barrel, that Hog Rider, whatever, that Giant Golem, you name it, you got to be prepared for possibly activating King Towers. Do you think this is an interesting development in the game, or is it concerning? Me personally, I kind of think it's interesting. What do you think?
I really like it. I think it's another great card for the game because it has a high skill cap. In order to get the value out of that 3 elixir spell, you really do have to know exactly what you're doing. The fact that it synergizes particularly well with the Executioner makes it quite scary, but I think that it's also another good card because it doesn't really matter what level you have it at. It's going to have that pull effect regardless. So the damage isn't really what you're going for with Tornado. So it's a good card for free-to-play players who can figure out the pulls onto the King Tower and how to get that to work and how to clump up big pushes that might otherwise be scary so that you can take them down easily with other forms of splash damage.
Yeah, agreed there for sure. Thoughts on Battleram coming out soon? I think it's going to be another really powerful card. What do you think?
It is coming out soon. I'm really excited about it. It's a great offense over defense type card. It's something that's going to make Siege a little bit more frustrating to play because he targets buildings, Battleram does, and then spits out 2 Barbarians right on top of you, which is also something that you don't want. But I think that it's a good card for the game. I like the introduction of new strikers, ways to punish decks that go really heavy on one side. I think that it'll help combat the beatdown metagame to some degree. I hope that it's strong, but I obviously I hope it's not too strong. But I'm excited for its release, and I think that it will be interesting to see how it gets played.
Yeah, I think, the uniqueness of the card I love. I love that it, essentially spawns those barbarians afterward. I am, worried is a strong word, but I am kind of concerned that that might make these beatdown decks even better in a way. I mean, the fact that you can just provide, essentially 3 extra tanks for 4 elixir for that executioner in the back, will just be interesting to see. That's kind of one of those cards, at least for me, it's just tough to predict. I feel like it's gonna, land flat or land really amazing, kind of like Executioner. I probably think the latter, but we'll have to see, I guess. Goblin Gang, though, not so excited about. That's coming up in a few weeks, I guess. But yeah, that might hurt the Goblin Gang. What do you think about Goblin Gang?
Goblin Gang's interesting. It'll be another addition to the Zap Bait arsenal. I don't know if it's going to make that big of a splash on the metagame. Oftentimes when you're playing goblins or spear goblins, it's because they're super cheap and you just want to make a tiny little poke or prod here or there. So I'm not really sure how people are going to be using Goblin Gang. It just might be that it requires a lot more planning and thought than I have given it. But yeah. It's a good, solid, cheap, easy card that players will not have a whole lot of difficulty understanding how to use it. It'll be good for draft challenges to be able to throw that down. So when you're thinking about, do I want to play a Goblin Gang or a Skeleton Army, though, I think most of the times you're going to actually want to play the Skeleton Army instead. The fact that they both are going to be able to be killed by the log, but Skeleton Army just spawns so many tight little melee dudes and has an increased distraction effect, I think is going to make Skeleton Army probably outclass Goblin Gang in most circumstances.
Yeah, agreed. Do you think that something I meant to ask you earlier, and final question from me today, Woody, is do you think that we talked about common cards and over-leveled common cards? I wanted to get your take on, just for sake of even numbers, if someone has level 13 maxed out commons and they only have level 9 and 10 rares, do you advise people to use the maxed out commons versus the level, say, 10 rares? Or do you think it's still, in terms of whatever fits best in the deck? An example would be, if I have a deck that I copied from the #1 player in the world that has Mega Minion in it, but my Mega Minion's not max, but my minions are, would you recommend I make that swap and go with a max card, or should you just go with what you think probably is the best fit for the deck?
Decks are often very carefully constructed by some of the top players, so there often is a reason why you have Mega Minion instead of minions. It really depends upon the card, though, and I know that's not a very satisfying answer, but for something like minions, if they are under-leveled, you're going to have a bad time because Musketeer is going to one-shot them. If your goblins are under-leveled, you're going to have a bad time because Zap is going to be able to kill them, and Zap is still quite popular in the game right now, despite its recent nerf. There's a whole slew of cards. Musketeer, if it's under level, it can be killed by Fireball, same thing for the Wizard. So there are cards that benefit a lot by having them at a higher level. So if you are in fact able to play those max level common cards instead of a rare alternative, sometimes you will want to do that. Those few examples are I think pretty good instances of cards that you would want to swap out if you have them under leveled. But overall, I would say don't mess with success, and unless you have a very compelling reason or a high level of understanding of the way that a deck works, it's probably better to go with what you're given. But
okay, yeah, good advice there, which is something I was curious about. So, because I find myself sometimes swapping in the max card, sometimes just going with what I've got. Most of the time, just go with, like you said, what the pros use. Like you said, they work so long and hard. People don't often realize how often they test a deck before they've reached something they're happy with. So solid advice there, Woody. Always such a pleasure to have you on, man. Love chatting Clash Royale with you. Any shout outs, anything on the agenda coming up soon that we should know about?
Yeah, would love to give a shout out to Reddit Alpha. That's the clan that I lead. Hope that if y'all are looking for a clan, you'll come check us out. We have a 5K trophy minimum to join. I also stream on Twitch. WWoody123 is the username. And I'm also here on YouTube. I publish videos here every once in a while. I hope that you'll check out the card popularity snapshots as I continue to publish them on the subreddit. That's r/Clash Royale. I release those every other week and have really enjoyed talking with you about them whenever we get a chance to review the metagame. So thanks again for inviting me to your channel, Ash. It's always a pleasure, and I hope that your viewers enjoy our discussion from today.
They always do, man, and it's always a pleasure to have you on. Take care, dude.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.